Welcome to Home's Room. Just like Homeroom, we start off our day getting together with our homies, swapping stories, even a little kiss and tell action. This podcast contains language not suitable for younger listeners, topics about sex and mental health. Discretion is advised. Our views are our own. Let class begin. Welcome back to Home's Room. Super excited for this episode, not because it's an exciting episode, but because it's like one that like means a lot to me personally, and I'd imagine it means a lot to you, Caitlin, who's also here with me. What's up?
What is up, Matt? Yes, in general, I feel like it's a weekly thing that I start to look forward to, hanging out with you and starting to talk and research into mental health topics that neither of us know maybe too much about. This was one that I definitely learned up about. But yeah, how are you, Matt?
I'm good.
Let's do a mental health friend check-in, you know?
I'm good. I've been going through some stuff at work, which sucks, but it's almost over. I got 2 days left as we are recording this, so I'm excited. And then from there, I get to be a para teacher with my kid, at least not with my kid, but in the same school that she's in. So I'm super excited about that. To like the thought of being able to like walk past her in the hallway and like just that's exciting. It's scary and nervous making, but like still exciting at the same time.
Will still be a positive change for you, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what we're hoping, right?
Yeah. My most rewarding job was when I was an early education teacher. So I appreciated that, and going back to something like that, I hope will do wonders for the soul. So I'm gonna turn it back around. How are you? You good?
I'm hanging. We just had our first, as we're recording this, we just had our first fundraising event for my nonprofit on Saturday, which was super nerve-wracking because it was like, first of all, I was terrified that we weren't going to have enough raffle items to raffle off and that nobody was going to show up. And then I was like, oh shit, well, what if too many people show up? And it ended up being even better than I thought it was going to be. My older brother surprised us and drove up from Texas for the event, which was awesome. And we ended up raising a little under $3,000 for our very first fundraising event, which was fucking awesome. So after the event, I slept for 12 hours. And then Sunday night, I slept for another 12 hours. Nice. So I told my Discord friends this morning, I said, I slept a lot this weekend and I'm back on my bullshit. So what's up?
I like it. Well, good. That sounds exciting. I'm glad that went so well. And like, I like doing like it's silly, but I build stuff, so I do a lot of like people like ask for commissions to build something for their raffles, and so I love the atmosphere around raffles and what that is. That atmosphere is really fun because when it's for a good cause, like you could get like a Twinkie bar I don't know if you call it a bar, but either way, you could get a Twinkie and somebody might pay like, $30 for it just because it's for a good cause. So that makes me happy that you were successful.
We were very, very blessed. We were very fortunate. There are a lot of people. I actually this is a fun like grievers moment when it's not until after your loved one dies that you hear fun stories about them. Mm-hmm. And one of the cigar companies, Arturo Fuente, that partnered with us for the event, Jake is the cigar rep. And the manager of the shop, who I've known for years and years, who is also a board member of our nonprofit, Jess, she was like, I called Jake and I asked like, hey, like, would you want to partner with this nonprofit? Don Rife's kids are partnering and they're putting it on for their nonprofit. And she was like, I could not even get the question out of my mouth until he said yes. So she had told me like, oh, Jake knew your dad, was friends with him. And he wants to donate. He donated a like $400 box of cigars to raffle off for this event. He donated the most beautiful humidor I'd ever seen in my life. And then Saturday, I actually got to meet with him and talk to him for the first time. And he said, can I just show you the only business card that I've ever carried in my wallet. He whips out his wallet, still to this day. Dad's been gone for a year and a half, almost 2 years now. Whips his wallet out, and it is my dad's business card from when he was a Fed. The gold foil's all worn off, and in the back of the business card is in his handwritten, his cell phone, handwritten on the back. And he handed it to me, and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. He said, yeah. Back in the day, so Jake knew my dad from over 16 years ago, like when he first started smoking cigars when he was 19. And I don't know his exact age. I don't want to speculate because I'm awfully guessing that, but he is significantly older than I am. So it's been probably about 20, 25 years that he's known my dad. And he said, yeah, back in the day when I first started the cigar rep situation, Isabel, you hear my cat. Sorry, friends. But anyways, Jake was like, yeah, back when I started the cigar rep stuff, I was traveling a lot. My wife had a stalker. And he started, talking to my dad about it during their weekly smoke appointments. They'd get together every Monday night and smoke cigars. And my dad instantly flipped his business card out, gave it to Jake and said, you call me. When you have issues, you call me. And I'm sure there was more that came of that, but it was still very fucking cool to meet somebody that my dad had such a significant impact on, and a complete validation of everything that we were striving for, and continuing his spirit of generosity, of time, knowledge, finances, all of it. It's still very cool to hear little stories about that, and that's not something that I ever would have known while he was here. He was not, he gave generously. He gave gifts to everybody during babies, weddings, all the things. And he was never the person to brag about it. So it was just still very floored and very shocked that even almost 2 years after he's gone, I'm hearing insane stories about him, his generosity, and how protective he was over his people. Yeah. And it's also very validating because I am the same way over people that I love and adore. So fuck around and find out,
as you illustrated for me today, which I appreciate. Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing those stories from you, because the way you light up about it is just it's different. You tell stories and you're jocular and all that stuff, but the way you light up when you tell those stories is just different. And I appreciate that, and I'm sure people have grown to enjoy listening to us, hopefully, or also enjoying hearing you talk about that and get excited about it. So
we love our listeners. Hello, friends, wherever you're at, wherever you're tuning in, if it's on your drive into work or you're just doing dishes or whatever the fuck else in between. Hello, friends, we love you.
Yeah, we do. And that's a perfect segue into this thing. Hopefully I have good video quality, but
stickers.
You can't see this, but I am showing Caitlin the Homes Room stickers that I got. I have taken the possession of them over the weekend. I'm super excited about them. It is the Homes Room logo, just like what you see when you click on the podcast. So at this point, we are talking about doing a QR code one as well. So we can do a QR code sticker, so we can pass them out, or you just slap them anywhere and just we're just going to start what is it, sticker bombing places with Homes Room stickers, so they can scan the QR code and get straight to the podcast. I think that'd be awesome. But you want a sticker, write a review.
Yes. Matt, do I get stickers?
You do get stickers, of course you do. Have you written a review yet? No, I'm just joking. But of course you get a sticker. I don't even have a sticker. I pulled this one out of the bag, so I don't even have one yet. But they're fresh. But yeah, write a review, send a screenshot to one of the social media accounts, and we'll get you a sticker sent out, and you can display it wherever you want to display it. And I would appreciate that. If you've already done a review, you can send a screenshot of your review with proof that you is that person. But yeah, moving on from that one, because that was awesome news. This episode is going to be airing during Movember. We're recording it early, obviously, because we are way ahead, because I'm a stupid planner and didn't think that part through. But we're doing men's mental health episode, and that's something that is very like near and dear to me, obviously. But I wanted to do this one where we kind of have a little bit of like a things that you might find out there that maybe aren't something that you agree with where it comes to help, or examples of things that are supportive for men that you might not have heard of, and maybe some personal experience from on my part, specifically with PTSD, just simply because it's an event that just happened, and been dealing with some stuff over the last few weeks, and it made me think about the episode we did. I think it was availability of help, where we I did a stat on how African American youth have like a disproportionate amount of PTSD, and they shouldn't it shouldn't be that way, but it is, and that's unfortunate. So I had a dream the other night, and it's the first time I've ever had a dream like this, and I've talked about dreams on here before, so it just kind of is what it is. Dealing with some stuff in my personal life, and I would hope that our relationship is close enough that like you'll understand what I mean when I say like I've never had a dream like this, because my mind doesn't go there. But
your dreams are very significant, Matt. If I know anything about you, I know that, bud.
Yeah. So I was thrust into a situation where racism was an issue, but I didn't necessarily it wasn't like on the surface. It was like, I guess the best way to say it would be like systemic racism, but like it was very, like
at your, in what context? Sorry, at your job, or
kind of, I guess. It was more. Realistically, the situation didn't necessarily even like really exist in that way. It was just brought up, and it became like a huge topic. And when this airs, it's going to be long enough after that. It's not necessarily an issue, but I definitely don't want to get too much into detail with it, only because like it's not just a situation that pertains to me. So, other people's privacy does come into it. But the context was racism was brought up. And it made me feel a kind of way, and that was unfortunate. And it, I assume, is why I had this dream. But, to talk about men's mental health, and, I think that goes hand in hand with, how men can express themselves and how men can be heard out. One of my favorite memes that I see is people talk about men's mental health until a meme comes out. Like, I don't know, Will Smith crying. That's one that like pisses me off. There's just so many situations where that happens. But in the stream, right? And like I said, this is where like, hopefully you know me enough to know that I don't actually like subscribe to the thinking every time I go out of the house. But I was late to work. I was, in a rush, maybe speeding a little bit, but not really, not anything crazy. And I go to work really early in the morning. So, nobody's on the road. I pull into the parking lot of my job, and law enforcement officers hang out in the parking lot all the time because there's nothing going on in it. So they just park behind our building, something like that. And as I pulled in, one was pulling out, and I assume he saw me pull in the parking lot really quick. And before I could like get my car parked, he had, spun in and threw his car in park. And as I was opening my door to get out and grabbing all my stuff to like run in the building, cause I was late, he grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and, drew a taser and was yelling at me. And I was like, I work here. Like, I don't like what's going, and, was just yelling at me.
When was this?
This was a dream. This is what I'm talking about. This is a dream.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this is a dream.
Lawrence PD, where the fuck you at?
No, this is
okay.
This is the dream,
Following.
and that's why it's so significant. And that was one of those moments where I didn't know how to react in this dream, and I don't often have dreams like. I can count on like one hand the amount of times like law enforcement has been involved in my dream. So like that's not a thing that I often like even relate to anything, but I assume it was the most like, I guess, like vivid thing that my subconscious could like pull into context with racism per the situations that are going on around the country and kind of around the world, in all honesty. And it just like kind of shocked me, and dealing with racism and, you know, calling out racism or any of those things is good, but also has ricochets. If you are a person that's experiencing racism, it kind of is up to you what you do with that, whether you choose to say something or whether you choose to, you know, not let it bother you, or to just, you know, deal with it in the way that you see fit. And sometimes I think people decide they want to interject into that situation and call it out and say this, and they don't realize that they're actually making it worse for that person. Just like a woman being harassed at work, you know, like, although you shouldn't be harassed at work, although you don't want to be harassed at work, and you might not, you know, you might want to speak up, but you don't, to preserve your peace, to be able to, you know, accomplish the things you have to accomplish. And sometimes like speaking up on somebody's behalf is not necessarily like the best way. And I think that that's what that dream was telling me, because I don't, like I said, I've never had a dream like that. I don't like often, you know, feel like that's going to be, you know, the situation. If I was worried about, you know, stuff like that, I probably wouldn't leave my house. And it's unfortunate that like it took a dream like that and a situation like that, and that's ultimately where I came to the realization that this situation is exactly what causes PTSD. Where, you know, now this is a moment in my life that's always going to come back to like a question: is this the same situation? Is this not? And that's, you know, the like root of PTSD is a traumatic situation that your brain stores and then tries to figure out some way to protect itself. And, you know, it could be avoided sometimes, this being one of those situations.
Real, rational or not, PTSD, as someone who is diagnosed with it and has a lifelong lifelong experiences with it, is between PTSD and trauma, your brain rewires into survival mode and things that it thinks it's doing to help you process trauma or avoid it. So I definitely understand and relate to what you're saying. I think that there are a lot of people that can relate to exactly what you just described. I hope that, you know, one of the hardest things I ever had to do when I started to sit down and process through my own shit through therapy and the help of a mental health clinician, was processing and starting to not only recognize, but deprogram some of those trauma responses that my brain set up as PTSD. A lot of it is like hypervigilance and preparing for the worst situation. I still to this day feel like I'm on edge, just waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it's just happened to me so many times in my life. Like, yeah. So I totally understand. And I think it's really like relevant and important that you're opening up and sharing about that. So thank you, Matt. Yeah. I'm sorry that you're dealing with all that shit, but yeah. I wish I could take everything from everybody that I care about, and that is a trauma response in and of itself.
It is. But no, I appreciate it. And like I said, you know, you foster a safe environment here, and I appreciate it. So I felt like it was somewhere I could tell, you know, that dream. And, you know, like I said, it's not something that like I talk about often, because to me, it's like, it just kind of is. But moving on, you know, like I said, we're talking about this, and one thing that I wanted to point out, and this is not to like detract from, you know, anybody else's struggles or anything, but when it comes to like men specifically and sexual crimes against men, like it's often laughed at, like, oh, like I wish I had that problem. You know, it's like, no, it's a thing. I think that although it may only be about 3% of like the American men that are, you know, victims of sexual assault or rape, and, you know, it's like, I think it says 1 in every 10 rape victims are men. That's still... Is
that reported crimes?
That is reported crimes, correct. And that's, you know, still people on the other end of that number. And I think that that's what we often lose sight of when it comes to numbers, is like the actual person on the other side of that. And this is something that most of my family doesn't know. Some of I think I told my mom and maybe my sister, but when I was younger, maybe from like the age of like 7 to like the age of like 10, we had a family friend whose daughter would like sexually assault me. And that was something that, like, for the longest time, because of the stigma that surrounds that, I didn't see it as bad. I didn't see, I clearly knew it was wrong. And my mind was like, this is something that you would get in trouble for, so you can't talk about it. And then growing up, it was like, oh, well, that's just, normal because I'm a guy. It wasn't until, just before, just after COVID, that I processed it and thought about it, and like was like, no, that was wrong. That shouldn't have happened. I clearly was not of an age to consent, and like that was being taken advantage and abused. So it's like, I think that that is something that very much needs to be addressed in society, but also, I think that women can play a role in that as well. And not, like I said, not to detract from that struggle, because it is also only like 3%, but it's 3% of a shared trauma where it just needs to not happen. It just needs to be recognized.
Holy shit, Matt. Very clearly, I hope you understand and know that this is a very safe place and a safe space that you have been intricately involved in developing, if you are comfortable sharing something like that with us. So thank you very much, first and foremost. Coming from I swear to God, Matt, do you hear this fucking bitch of a cat?
I do. I have a note about it that I'll bring up later.
I keep throwing shit at her. I'm so sorry. This is like a fun like side quest while I'm trying to get this episode recorded. She's such a bitch. But anyway, so I asked you that question earlier, specific to reported sexual assault against men, just because it's a fun social experiment when it comes to reported crime. So coming from the criminal justice perspective, the crime that has almost 100% reported rate is auto theft, because 9 times out of 10, you will always be able to understand and know when a car is missing, and especially when it's your car that's missing or stolen or whatever. So that's kind of like the top of the like spectrum, or like the, whatever, of the whole other side of the spectrum are any crimes involving sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, sodomy, any of it. Just because there is so much taboo against it. There's so much of an intense situation with victims coming forward, or people feeling like they are not actually true victims of a crime, or it's a very complicated dichotomy compared to other crimes such as auto theft. So there's, in criminal justice, we talk about this, it's like the unknown number, it's like the dark number of crime, where those are crimes that never go reported, that we can't ever account for. And usually sexual assault, sexual harassment, sodomy, rape, all of those crimes are kind of involved or included in that higher spectrum of things that go underreported. So, Matt, thank you so much for trusting us with that. And I hope that there are other listeners who may, as unfortunate as it is, may be able to relate to that experience. Specifically males. As part of the research for this episode, you wanted us to look into a couple stats that we thought were important about men's mental health. And I really wish I could say I was surprised with too much of what I found. But I think there's a larger conversation to be had about that. So how do you want to segue into that, boss?
Just like that. You're the stat queen, so I was hoping you were going to have some stats. so we can hit the stats, and then I have a an Insta post that like I just want to point out the like silliness of it, and this is what like what men slash what is pushed towards women about men, and that's one of the things that's silly. So we'll go with stats, and then we'll go there. So what we got? What stats you got?
So, you know, overall, I was not necessarily surprised to hear or to see and read up on the fact that mental health disorders, mental health illness, or mental illness, men reaching out to mental health professionals to get some help are significantly lower than women. There's over 6 million men who suffer from depression every year, but male depression often goes undiagnosed. There's 2.3 million Americans who are affected by bipolar disorder, and an equal amount of men and women who develop the illness. The onset, or the age of onset for men, is between 16 to 25 years old. I believe that's also around the same age frame that women develop it as well. At least, later teens, earlier 20s. That is definitely one issue that does not wait that waits until your brain is a little bit more developed to fully show the symptoms and things like that. So I definitely was not surprised that here's another one. Women have a significantly higher frequency of depression and anxiety in adulthood, while men have a larger prevalence of substance use disorders and antisocial behaviors. Women also have a higher prevalence of depression and anxiety disorders due to genetic and biological factors. Though the very last part of that I'm going to probably disagree with. Women have a higher prevalence of depression and anxiety disorders due to genetic and biological factors. I do not believe that there's any fucking data set alive or in, any type of psychological or behavioral disorder research that accounts for 100% of a gender difference. And this kind of ties into last week's episode that we filled in, or that we recorded, when I was talking to you about some of these influencers who are absolutely batshit nuts, talking about the ideal male and the alpha males and this, that, whatever the fuck. It is not news, or it hopefully is not obvious that I'm saying that for men, there is a significantly higher stigma of coming forward, admitting that you need help, and also getting to the point where you're reaching out to a mental health professional to get it. There's so much more pressure to be masculine, like you can't be seen as weak, this, that, whatever the hell. So any study that wants to say that there's a higher rate of diagnosis or a higher percentage of diagnosis of mental health disorders in women than men, without even offering a spot for a conversation between gender differences and coming forward and asking for help, is just asinine, in my own personal opinion. So I just found several studies that were talking about how the fact that mental illness and sexes are different, that women are more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Men tend to turn towards substance use or abuse, and antisocial disorders. But again, when you do not feel like reaching out for help is as much of an option to you as maybe your female counterparts, of course you're going to turn to antisocial behavior to cope. And of course you're going to turn to substance abuse to cope, because you don't feel like it's maybe as accepted or as much of an option to actually offer a hand forward and say, like, yes, I need help. I need a therapist. I need a psychologist. I need somebody to help me process through all of this. And I need long-term testing and treatment through medications and therapy to finally get to the point where we're saying, like, we've tried option A, we've tried option B. Here's to the point where I'm actually finally comfortable getting diagnosed with an antisocial or some type of mental health disorder. So
yeah.
Thoughts, Matt? I just ranted for a hot sec. So
yeah, that's the thing is, I think that, what it becomes especially with around the men's side of it, is to compare the numbers is almost like comparing the numbers of, ants in this anthill versus ants in that anthill. Like, unless you can tell me that you got every single one of those ants out of both of those and ran whatever experiment you were running, there's no way to really compare the two evenly. And I think the stigma of like you said, of being weak, that's one thing that like I tried to change, is whenever I bring up anything about my mental health, I try and be as like forward as I can, simply because I don't think that if I say, yeah, but I'm all right, then that's not doing myself any service, and that's not doing a person that might be struggling and is worse than me, any help. So like, I try not to do that. But, I think that stats like that, like you said, it just makes, it doesn't surprise me, but it also like kind of makes me a little sad that we're still in that place. And, it just illustrates the, like, across the board, the numbers are higher than I would like them to be, but the number of like guys that can go out and say, yo, I need to focus on this, I need help, whether it's finding a group of friends or a counselor or, something productive and not substance abuse, for every one of those guys out there that's going to find that, I think that is, maybe two more guys that see him and say something. And it's, the good version of a good old pyramid scheme where he tells two friends and his two friends tell two friends, and now we're, tracking in the right direction. That's
One thing I did wish I had more time to maybe look into, but also I did not really think that there was a ton of information available, is how COVID and the pandemic changed mental health specific to a gender difference between men and women. I know that the pandemic helped with everybody coming forward and everybody getting, mental health, but I'm very interested to see if that gender difference still existed specific to that population of people during the pandemic that came forward, or if there was any type of notable difference. I think it's also a super relevant body of research that not a lot of people, I don't know. Maybe I just haven't done enough research about it. I'm not going to pretend that I sat here and read every single gender difference in mental health reporting or mental health, assets or mental health, help asked for based on gender. I didn't do that, but it definitely feels like it's something that specific to the pandemic would be a really great body of research. I don't know, maybe if there were enough hours in the day, I would have been able to look into that, Matt. Yeah. But as you and I both know, there are never enough hours in the day.
There are not. No, I mean, and that's the thing, is like, that's a rabbit hole. And like, if we wanted to like throw out numbers, I'm sure we can, use the social for that when this episode drops, and just post, some screenshots of the studies, and people can see that. But I mean, in the end, honestly, the whole point of this is not necessarily to share the stats. It's to bring awareness to the conversation, and that those stats are out there. And I think that, that's kind of what you illustrated just there, is that like those stats are out there. And, if you have concerns or questions about, what those stats are, like, do some research, and maybe you find something that you didn't know, and you educate yourself on it that like is relevant to you. 'Cause we're just kind of picking out topics that like are relevant to us, or, studies that are relevant to us because we found them interesting. So, you never know what you might find that you're like, dang, I didn't know that was, a situation. So, it is what it is with that one. Also, can I just say real quick, you say this thing and there's like a turn of phrase that certain people have that like that one person can deliver, and it just sounds good. But if anybody else were to say it, it just doesn't, it's not the same thing. So you say this, that, whatever the fuck. And the way it rolls off your tongue, and editing the last episodes, you said it like maybe twice. And I was just like, God, that just like rolls off her tongue so smoothly, and I love it.
Holmes room drinking game. You hear Caitlin say this, that, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it makes you want to go back and like hear, like, have you said it for a while and I just never noticed it? And then that last episode,
no, it's definitely a catchphrase that I have, but I definitely lean onto it more when we're here in the podcast setting.
Yeah.
I will say. So I don't know. I don't think I ever say that in like my professional work.
Yeah.
No one be under any illusions that I don't drop the fucking F-bomb while I'm at work. I definitely do that. But this, that, whatever the fuck is maybe just reserved for Holmes room.
Well, I assume in the last episode I just noticed it because you were like so passionate that your brain wasn't like trying to be like semi-professional, like, you know, whatever we are as podcast hosts. Like it was just
a compliment for you to assume that I would do that the fuck anyways, Matt.
Yeah, I love it. I concede that point completely. So I'm gonna throw out this Instagram post, and if you have another stat, we can go back to stats. But
no, absolutely, go ahead.
So I scrolling through. I enjoy taking in content about like sexual openness. So people that are bringing awareness around the topic of sex. I've called out the Shameless Sex podcast quite often, and they had an episode which I'm going to talk about in a little bit and link in the show because I think it's a good one to listen to, especially for like female listeners. And like that's good. However, this page, I'm not going to call them out because they usually post decent things. This one's just really stupid. So it's 7 unique ways to predict the size of a guy's penis. Why are we even
what?
Exactly. Why are we even making a post about that? Let alone like the stuff that's in here. Like I'm just going to flip through a couple. 1, look at his hand size. I've seen just as many studies say that that's not real as that say it is real. So I would imagine probably not a good indicator. Maybe, but not really. Let's see. What's another one? Big nose can indicate big penis size. I don't know that actually has a correlation. And the fact that that's out there is just stupid. The size of his feet, which usually like big feet, big hands, that thing, like they go hand in hand. That's silly. The length of his index finger. That is one of the only ones that I have heard has any kind of context towards like member size, and that's simply due to the fact that something to do with like the way testosterone gets distributed in your body and the way it makes your fingers, one of your fingers is longer than the other because of that. So like the dose of testosterone you got as a baby maybe changes the size of that, so you have more testosterone. But again, there's no like proven science to that. And this one is the one that makes me laugh the most, is the way he sits can show his size. And if he sits with his legs open, that means it must be big, correct? And that's just like, why is this content out there? And there's uneducated people that see this and are now judging guys based on that. So like maybe they treat a guy poorly, or maybe, you know, they make fun of a guy because it's like, oh, it must be small because you sit with your legs crossed. Like those are the things that just perpetuate the cycle of like poor men's mental health, in my opinion. What do you got on those ones?
I'm super confused why somebody would think that was, I don't know. You'll maybe have to send me the profile that you pulled that from. I've heard some of those tales of like, oh, well, like the hand or like the hand measurements or whatever have something to do with penis size. I also just think that there's like, I just feel like there's so much like anticipation or like false inflation behind guessing what a man's penis size is going to be without ever seeing him naked. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like old school, but like unless you're, I don't know, maybe back in the day when I was single and like could like entertain like the concept of like hit like a cute guy coming up at a bar and like flirting with me or whatever, like that would be something that I would like have as a conversation the next day with like my sorority sisters as we're like eating off our hangover the next day. But like in my married age as a mom of 2, especially of somebody who has a son someday that might have to face some kind of, you know, some of the scrutiny, it's just like why are you worried about that when there's so much more that goes into a relationship or a successful relationship or, you know, a meaningful long-term relationship than just penis size?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
What
would
the fuck
agree
do
with
I
that.
know, Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's one of the things that bugs me. Whenever people make any kind of like comment about like, you know, penis size or anything like that, or like the way it looks, whether it's cut or natural, like whatever the thing is, it always bugs me because it's like, while you're making those comments thinking you're, you know, hip or you're like, you know, the normal thing, it's, there's probably like 15 people you just put down in that room that like now feel shame because you opened your mouth and said something stupid. And I think that that's definitely one, just like, you know, commenting on a woman's body, like it doesn't need to happen. And like there's enough like shame on he's a 1 minute man kind of thing that we don't need the rest of that. So like, just, that's like you said, in specifically an episode that dropped today about coping, and I was talking about my, you know, eating my feelings, and you said, I don't know, why don't we just stop talking about other people's fucking bodies? And I think that that applies here as well. So
Absolutely, it does. And I feel that too, especially if we're going to be passionate about people making comments about women's bodies and what is or is not desirable and how subjective it is based on whoever and all these other external factors. We have to carry that same grace and that same inertia to the conversation about men. And, I don't know. It's a fine balance, I feel like, between like, oh, like men are the top dogs. They're the ones that like get their way always, versus men are also subjected to really unfair treatment in terms of body shaming, sexuality, you know, all the difficult topics that come with things like that, I don't know. I feel like it's not fair if we're, you know, championing women and being really vocal advocates for them and the struggles that they face without at least acknowledging or having a whole episode, thank you, Matt, dedicated to the struggles that men also have in these topics. Like, I totally agree. Why the fuck are we having any type of comments or commentary about anybody's bodies? When these are the bodies that keep us going. These are the bodies that deserve to be fueled and deserve to be acknowledged for the life that they bring us. Like, we're only going to ever have one body while we're here alive on this earth. I don't think that it is specific to gender to have some type of conversation about exactly what you said, Matt, of everybody shut the fuck up about everybody else's body. Why are we making conversations about men who are super buff or too skinny or this, that, you know, vice versus whatever? I think it's different when you're perhaps with a group of friends having a conversation about what you prefer as, like, I don't know, somebody that you find appealing.
Yeah.
But in general, specific to what I talked about last episode that we recorded with my YouTube Shorts algorithm and like the ideal women, ideal men, Matt, it has just gotten worse. Like,
we talked about it.
It's just gotten so much worse. So when we're having conversations about the ideal man or the ideal woman, or you have to be like only these types of guys or the alpha males, like, shut the fuck up. Nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. We're all just dumb idiots floating around on a rock. And also, as of this week, as we're recording this, aliens are real and nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
So like, whatever, you know, I think that everybody, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, anything, deserves the benefit of the doubt. And in some basic level of humanity, we all just want to be loved, seen, and respected. And I really do not think that that's too much to ask for. You know,
I don't either. I agree with you. Sometimes I think, you know, like, damn, do I live in an echo chamber? And like having you on and talking to you, it's like, damn. Is it like, am I creating an echo chamber for other people to live into? And it's like, I don't know that it's an echo chamber. I think we have different opinions. We have completely different sets of facts. We just happen to arrive at the same conclusion, which tells me it's not an echo chamber. It's just you agree on this thing. I agree on this thing, even though we should not ordinarily agree, which is a little bit different. It's not just like, oh, well, we both believe this thing, so we're going to shove it down your throat.
To be fair, Matt, we have never had any type of serious conversation about political ideology, political beliefs. Like, you and I have never had a conversation about how we voted in the past. Not to mean that is, you know, a huge indicator of somebody's personality or morals or whatever. Who you vote for is super inflated in today's day and age just because it is such a polarizing topic, and like either you're in good versus evil depending on the subjectivity of that definition, whatever. I definitely feel like you and I are able to come together and have some type of coherent conversation about difficult topics like this, but at the same time, like specific to this episode, I personally don't feel like I've ever really seen too much conversation about, like, if you want to call it the men's rights movement. Mm-hmm. When I was in grad school, I watched a documentary called, hold on, let me Google it. It's called the Red Pill something documentary. And it goes into detail about the men's rights movement, how it's called The Red Pill. It came out in 2016. It was directed by Cassie J. And it was super powerful for me in that moment because here I was in grad school in a blue state being fed all this stuff about law enforcement, about social movements, this, that, whatever. I think the Michael Brown shooting had happened just 2 or 3 years earlier. So there were a lot of specific opinions about law enforcement. But The Red Pill is a specific documentary that explores the men's right movement, and it goes into specific detail about statistics for, you know, suicide rates of men versus women, of child support payouts of men versus women. It goes into the feminist movement and people that wanted to have whole conversations about, she goes into a whole section of feminism and how there were crazy radical feminists that were showing up to some men's rights movement protests or whatever the fuck. I don't know. It was specifically powerful to me because Cassie J, who was the director and producer of this documentary, she's the narrator. She's goes through the whole documentary. The very last podcast, or the very last like sentence of the entire documentary, is that I've explored this whole movement. I've gone into the men's right movement. This, that, whatever. One thing's for sure, I no longer identify as a feminist. And before then, she had painted herself as like a super, you know, intense feminist. Whatever. There are very strong feelings about this documentary. There's very strong feelings about red pill versus blue pill and anything that has to do with political conversation or political annotation, whatever. In grad school, it was a very intense time for me to be researching some of my own personal convictions. Mm-hmm. And I found it to be really powerful in that day and age. Maybe I'd want to go back and look at it now, but I feel like there's a lot of conversation about feminism, women's rights, everything that comes with that. There has to at least be some room for conversation for the other side of it to happen. If we're talking about equality and we're talking about equality between genders, there's got to be room for enough conversation between both genders. And I'm maybe not doing enough justice for how awesome this documentary was, or how much I respect that she went into detail about some of these more complicated topics of conversation. Just last week we were talking about just pearly girly, just pearly things, and some of the things that she was talking about, how like, okay, feminists, if you want equal opportunity, then go out on an oil rig. Like, there are jobs there for you. Like, you go build and, you know, do all the infrastructure shit. So like that's one way to approach that conversation. I feel like personally Cassie J maybe did a little bit more graceful approach
Yeah.
to that conversation. So I don't know. I feel like it's until we start to have open conversations about the gender differences specific to mental health and how how men probably have a much harder time coming forward and asking for help versus women. Everybody has a hard time asking for help, but I feel like we can't have this conversation without probably acknowledging that men have a harder time coming forward. I don't know. I feel like we're not doing justice to the topic unless we start having some type of conversation about gender differences about that in that specific topic, you know?
Yeah. I definitely, I don't know. I think that's the thing is that there has to be room to have the conversation in order to start the conversation. If there's not room for it, then like you're never going to have it. Also, I just had to go look up like, the like demographics for like females on a oil rig are like 3.2% of them. So like there are women out there doing oil rig work. So she should check some facts on that one. Just saying.
That anti-feminist.
Yeah. That always when people bring up, you know, stats like that or like, well, people should go do this. It's like, yeah, but do you know, are there like my favorite is like when people talk about, you know, hockey specifically, because it relates to me and, you know, that's a thing. But like, you know, like black people don't play hockey. That's not a thing. It's like, actually they do. And there's certain areas where like it's a heavily populated, like, you know, black neighborhood or black area. And they have like youth hockey teams. So that means that there is a draw for it. But again, where this pertains to the episode is if you continuously tell them that there's not room for them in this thing, that they're not allowed to do this thing, then they're going to be fewer and fewer of them, or it's going to be a harder fight to get them to accept it. So that's what, you know, my takeaway from, you know, this episode would be if I had to pick one for people is that this is just a jumping off point. If you have a man in your life or, you know, somebody that, you know, seems like they could be struggling or seems like there's something, you know, eating away at them, like give them the room to talk, give them the safe space to know that you're there for them, regardless of how you do it. You know, just make sure that you are doing things to support them and not to just assume that because they're a guy, they're going to, like, my least favorite thing to hear is, oh, you know how guys are, they're not going to say anything. It's like, well, I was 2 seconds away from saying anything, but now you say that, which makes me feel like you don't want me to say anything. So I'm just going to shut up. And that's, you know, a behavior that like in myself, I need to change, but also you could change by not saying stupid shit like that.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. Did you find any stats or do you want to move on to the next topic of how to support men?
Go. Good segue. We can jump there because we're coming in on time here. So
absolutely,
we're racing a percentage clock. So I know for me, you know, when it comes to supporting me, I have like a specific, like, I don't know if I'm the only one. So like, finding ways to support, like finding a list, is what I was going to do. And that's the thing I did not get around to for this, but, I know for me, supporting men looks different for every man, just like it looks different for every woman. And I think that when I see ways to support women, the number one thing that like all those lists boiled down to, and like the list that I did find originally, it's like almost identical to supporting a woman, where it becomes basically communicate, listen intently, listen to, you know, understand, not to respond, all those kind of things. So it sounds like, you know, the list that I could find is communication and real, genuine communication. Was that kind of what you found in looking up stuff?
It was. And like just having a conversation about like recognizing some of the symptoms of somebody that's like starting to struggle with mental health and, you know, things like that. But I don't know, man. Specific to men, I have a bullet point list of symptoms of mental health disorders in men. And the top one is escapist behavior, such as spending a lot of time at work or on sports. Like, for me personally, when my husband came home and was like, oh, I'm joining golf league and I'm going to hang out with a bunch of our friends our age. And like, yeah, it might cost a certain amount of money, but also like, I want to go one night a week and hang out and, you know, play golf with our friends. I wouldn't necessarily categorize that as escapist behavior. So, you know, bullet point lists on the internet are one thing. I feel like it's super difficult and it's so subjective on the person, your relationship with them, and the new behaviors that they start to demonstrate that it just kind of changes, you know? Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily send that up as a red flag. We're now going on 2 years of my husband paying money to do golf league with his friends one night a week. And if anything, you know, this specific article from what is this from? Hold on. It's from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Their top bullet point is escapist behavior, such as spending a lot of time at work or on sports. They might call it that, but I know for my husband, that's something that's beneficial in his mental health, because that's one night that he gets to fuck off from work and go hang out with his friends, and he doesn't have to worry about picking the kids up from daycare or bath night or dinner or anything with that. So that's super helpful to his mental health. I think a lot of it depends on, again, your relationship with that individual, the difference in behaviors they're exhibiting. But I don't know. I honestly wish, Matt, that when I researched this topic, I would have found more lists, but I didn't necessarily find a ton, you know?
So that was, you're on the nose, and you made the point, or you're like tapping at the point that I was hoping that we would be able to make by doing this. So, I have the prompt that I gave you pulled up, and it said, look for some how to support men lists, pick a few, decide if you agree, disagree, or are surprised by any item on it. And what I come up with whenever I see these lists posted to the internet is that they're always bad. Like they're like things that just don't make sense. And to me, what I see a lot of, like I said, communication is the only one that I see transposed between lists, when it comes to women and men. The other thing that I think I see is a lot of opposites. So on a, how to support women, or women, how to better their state, it's to go find to go find some physical activity to get your aggressions out, to go seek out friend groups to go do things with, like a jogging group, or, some sort of like a yoga, class or something where you're surrounded by peers, but also doing some sort of physical activity. And I find it so interesting that for a man to go do that means it's a problem. You don't want to encourage a man to go do that per some of these lists. And that's what I was finding when I originally started looking this up way back, before we even talked about doing this as an episode. And I think that's so interesting because, like, I play hockey, Courtney plays derby. Does that mean that I'm like escaping my feelings because I do that and she's not? Or is that just like we both have hobbies that we are doing to stay active because we enjoy them and they simply are that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I wish they were more out there specific to men. I'm a little bit validated in the fact that you also had something left to be desired with your search. But your next bullet point here on our topic list of this episode was times in your life you maybe didn't know how to best show support, and maybe how you'd handle it now. I have quite a few of those specific to my career in law enforcement. How now I have agents that have gone out on school shooting sites and wanted to have a conversation with me about it after I was the one that brought it up. There was a school shooting here in St. Louis while I was gone on maternity leave. And I didn't want to ask too many questions. I just saw the email notification from our supervisor that went out and was like, hey, if anybody wants to speak to a mental health clinician, here's where they'll be. And this was like the next day after the incident happened. I a month after that, happened to bring it up in passing with maybe two of my agents, and they were like, yeah, giving me the generic facts of the issue, a basic like case summary as federal investigators do. And I kind of shied away from having any more like detailed conversation with them about it, just because I didn't want to, make them re-experience some heartache or some trauma that they maybe saw from that day. But I don't know. I'm kind of caught in the middle between if I should have pushed a little bit further and seen how they were dealing with things from a mental health perspective versus just burying things just because clock starts over, you go to work the next day and there's 4 more fires to piss on kind of situation. But yeah, I feel like there were probably every situation that I could think of whenever you, that came to my mind when you gave me this prompt was, I think I shied away from shit maybe more than I should have. So.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the like societal, like thing is that like with anybody, when somebody's going through something, it's hard to like, do I say something? Do I not? Should I have asked more? Like, I think almost every interview I do, or I shouldn't say interview, every episode I do with you where we talk about a topic, that you're passionate about, or you said something, I think, damn, I should have asked her more questions about that. And I think that's just like nature. Like, was I attentive enough? And I often come back with, no, I could always ask more questions. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. It should be something that like I'm made aware of, and I shouldn't hold it against myself. But also, in those moments, I'm only human. And I think that, for you, especially in those situations, like that's a really hard subject to know what's on the line, what's over the line, and what is no fly zone, but like has to be broached because it is the thing that like clearly needs to. So that's definitely a good example of like, one I wasn't expecting. So I like that response to that.
Absolutely. I always wish I would have had the right things to say and the right answers in that moment. Don't worry. It just takes another 12 hours and me ruminating on the conversation to figure out what I should have said. So,
yeah. I mean, as long as that person, like for anybody out there in the same situation, as long as that person is still in your life and after those times, like they will appreciate it. One of my favorite things to say is like, if you reach out to somebody that like you care about or and you're like, hey, I feel like I could have handled that a little bit differently. I had, some, questions I wanted to ask to make sure that you felt supported, if that's okay, or if that's still okay, because it's showing a little bit of support. And regardless of whether they say yes or no, generally I would take it that they feel like you actually care enough to like follow up. And I think that that's the thing that like people don't do is like, oh, I shouldn't say this. I don't want to reach out to this person because they're going to think I'm weird. Let them think you're fucking weird. Because if they think you're weird, then it's like, that's a problem. Most of the time they don't think you're weird. They think it's, helpful, and like, damn, I didn't expect that. So just do it.
I feel that. Absolutely.
No. I don't know. You got it. That's what she said. Did you prepare one for Gray?
If I had a that's what she said, it would be, I do have a that's what she said. Here we go. Regardless of your gender, one of the strongest things that you can do for the people who love you and depend on you is admit that you need help and you can't handle shit by yourself. It took me probably way too long to figure this out. I talk about it in my book. I talk about it specific to how I finally got to that point once I was a mom. But something that I would have viewed as weakness, later on in my life, I have come to realize that it is one of the strongest acts of, it's one of the biggest acts of strength that you can do for those who love you and depend on you, is to ask for help and finally come to the conclusion and the realization that you do need help, that it's not something that you can handle by yourself, whether it's talking to a mental health clinician or a mental health professional, versus getting treatment through therapy versus getting treatment through medication. Coming to the understanding that things are abnormal, that things could be better, that they don't always have to be this way is really the first step on the way to healing. And again, almost every, I was on Lexapro for less than a week before I realized, like, holy shit, this is how other people think, feel, and function.
Yeah.
Like, this is how easy things are for other people. Like, why was I fighting, pursuing this avenue of treatment for so long? And it made me really sad for the past version of myself who saw that asking for help, getting help, being open, and finally to the place where I could accept that I needed help and could pursue treatment in whatever way it looked like. It made me really sad for that past version of myself that took so long to get to that point. So if that's something that you are struggling with, you are absolutely not the fuck alone. We're all just trying to figure it out. And I'm sorry if you have ever felt ashamed of being lesser than. But again, no one expects you to have your shit together 100% of the time. And if that's a standard that you're putting on yourself, it's unrealistic and it's unsustainable. So Matt and I are always here to be your biggest cheerleaders. Please reach out through Instagram, DM, voicemail, voice message, which is in the description of our Spotify episode description. We are always here and open to hear episode feedback, even if it's just something that you need validation for to pursue something further. But yeah. That's what she said, Matt.
I like it. I nodded vigorously the whole time. That was all really good. So, wrapping it up, that was a good one. And that was on point for this episode. I did say I wanted to talk about an episode of another show that I listened to, and it pertains to this episode. And I didn't know what to expect, judging from the title, but I took a lot from it. And they listed a lot of good resources. So I'm going to piggyback off of them and send you there if you were interested in hearing this episode or hearing the resources that are out there for men to feel supported around the topic of, like, a shameful-ish topic, I guess, for men. But it is the Shameless Sex Podcast. Amy and April, they do a really good job. They're really funny. They had episode number 338, and the title is Soft Cock Play and Why We Love Them with Michelle Renee. And I didn't know what to expect with that title. And what came out of it was just, like, so enlightening and so, like if I could just be, like, half of how understanding they were to a situation that probably affects, a ton of people. And they even said it, like, this may not affect you now, but it might affect you later. And I was just like, damn, I get, like, that's a very possible outcome. And, to think about it in that context, it like opened my mind to what they were saying differently. And that's not something that, like, every guy has thought about. It's not something that every woman has thought about. And the way that they talk about it, and it is shameless sex. The way they talk about it is just that. And I thought it was a really good episode. There's a website that they have, and I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be linked in their show notes, but you can send an encouraging message to somebody that has, like, shame around that. And I think that that's so cool that, like, somebody's out there like, yo, like, let's send an encouraging message to this person who just maybe needs a little bit of support, and that might turn their life around as far as, how they feel. So it was like, yeah. But I just wanted to drop that because that episode, like, sat with me for, like, a couple days where I was like, man, I really liked what they had to say. So and again, it's episode number 338 on the Shameless Sex Podcast. So, yeah.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that, Matt.
Yeah. Also, in closing, I just want to say no cats were harmed in the making of this episode.
Dude, I am so sorry. In future editing, Matt, this bitch is so mouthy. I'm just chucking things at her, hoping that she will shut the hell up. She was not injured, I promise you. It's very typical. She is not a nice kitty, so don't worry.
No, that's all good. So,
God damn it.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. And, write those reviews, get you a sticker. Yeah. Support your guy friends, support your girlfriend, support your trans friends, support everybody, because that's what we want to do. Regardless, that's what we're about. So thanks for listening.
We adore you all. We will catch you all on the next ep of Holmes Room.
Bye. The bell is about to ring. If you want to drop us a voice message or simply ask a question, you can do that by clicking the link in the show notes below. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It helps more people find us. Theme music by Kinsey. More music available on Spotify. Remember, every day is a class. Go learn something.